Hey guys, we got a short slideshow here today, but it's just basically trying to show you all where the British colonies stand within the bigger picture, how they fit in to the world around 1700. Around 1700, much of the world is divided up into colonial empires that belong to the four major powers of Western Europe. These powers are Spain, France, the Netherlands, and England. North America is divided up especially between France, Spain, and England, and the two most powerful colonies are New France, owned by the French, that kind of follows the Mississippi River all the way to New Orleans, and the British colonies on the East Coast. The Spanish aren't really major players anymore. The vast French colony has surrounded the British colonies and is threatening them all along the border, especially because the French are making alliances with Indian tribes and helping them to resist British expansion. This sets up some tensions between the French and the British for obvious reasons. But one has to ask, why are these European powers so interested in colonies? What's the point of carving out some territory an ocean away from the country where you live? Who cares? Well, you have to remember that these European powers are competing with each other for dominance. They all want to take over land from each other and control each other, and they're all constantly fighting with one another. This means that wars happen pretty frequently. In fact, Europe is at war for most of the 1600s and 1700s. Wars, as you might know, are extremely expensive. And this means that the countries who are fighting them are always trying to find new ways to make money. This leads to a strategy that is known as mercantilism. And mercantilism is where a nation seeks to regulate its trade in order to obtain as much gold as possible. The reason for this is that the nation with the most gold can afford the largest armies and the largest navies, and therefore can win the wars, and therefore can outcompete its rivals. That's why people start looking to mercantilism as a global strategy. And how they do mercantilism, how they regulate trade to obtain gold, is this. Each nation sets up colonies to make money. And they make money by, one, getting valuable raw materials from the colonies. And so this is stuff like fur, or tobacco, or silver, or sugar, or all sorts of other stuff also. But so these little tiny European nations are importing all sorts of stuff from their colonies in America. On top of this, they also sell a whole bunch of stuff to their colonists. So they can import a bunch of useful stuff and then sell a bunch of stuff that they make. This is stuff like clothes and guns, the two biggest things. And what both of these mean more cash for the nation that has the colony, and therefore bigger armies, and therefore a better chance of winning wars and becoming a more powerful European nation. So that's how mercantilism fits into the competition between major European powers. By 1700, England had implemented a mercantilist system in regulating its relationship with the American colonies that it had set up. And there are two major things that it did in relation to this strategy. First, they implemented the Navigation Acts, first passed in 1651. And these made it illegal for colonists to trade with anybody besides England. So that means that if you were an American and you wanted to sell some stuff, you were only allowed to sell it to England. That means that England gets all of the benefits. Also, if you are a colonist and you need to buy something, you're only allowed to buy stuff from England. So this means that England basically has a monopoly in America, and it can use this position to make a lot of money, which, remember, is the main goal of mercantilism. Also, Britain sets up this thing called the triangular trade. And a triangular trade is anytime you have a trade route that has 3 points on it. But this particular triangular trade is very profitable and important. And so how it works is England would take a bunch of stuff down to Africa, especially guns and booze. And there they would sell or trade these guns and booze in order to fill a ship up with slaves. And then they would transport these slaves across the Atlantic. You remember the Middle Passage, brutal conditions, 20% die on each trip. But the 80% that make it across, they sell these slaves to the Caribbean islands and to the Americas. And with the money they make from selling the slaves, they buy a whole bunch of American raw materials and transport that back to England. This is stuff like timber, sugar, tobacco. Later on, it's cotton. And then they sell these things in England, make a huge profit, and then repeat the cycle over and over again. And on the basis of this cycle, England makes incredible profits. So basically, England uses the colonies to make a lot of money. That's what you need to gather from all of this. The colonies are basically like a business investment, and all England wants from them, ultimately, is cash. So, I hope that gives you a bigger picture of why the colonies exist in the first place, why England decided to set them up. These are 3 key terms that are important for you guys. These are big ones, so make sure you understand them and make sure you are clear on what they mean. See you in class.